This is Restless Summer. Hey, we are going to jump right back into our interview with Aaron Renn this Restless Summer. Last week we talked about a lot of interesting things, including church planting. We left off discussing the church and if you need church plants to effectively evangelize communities. Aaron Renn is going to start this interview talking about some small rural churches and what they were able to do. We then are going to go on to discuss the elites, elitism. Is that good? Is that bad? And the only thing I think you need to know before you leave this episode is create a plan to not be a grill American. All right, I hope you have a good, restless summer. Let's get back to the interview.
Yeah, well, the church I grew up in, which is a rural Pentecostal church, probably started in the 1970s, maybe the 1980s. It may have been started in the early 1980s. And was, home visiting my mom, so we went to church on one Sunday, and a pastor there told a story. And he started a story that, he was sitting in his office, and he saw this car pull into the parking lot. And there was a woman in the car, and she didn't come in. She was just sitting in the parking lot. So he walks out to the car, and there's this woman and her kids in the car. He's like, "Yeah, can I help you?" And she proceeds to say, "I've been off drugs 3 days. I don't know how I'm going to make it, but I heard that people can get help at this church."
Wow.
And he's like, "That's what we want to be known as. We want to be known as the place where you can find help." And so when you have a church like that is ministering to many, many people with drug problems, problems with criminality, like that, the chaplain of the county jail is attending there. They have huge, they have halfway houses. You have no shortage of potential supply of converts, when you are ministering to people who are in real trouble, and you've got a knack. And so even though this church is not new anymore, they still make a lot of converts because of the nature of how they do ministry. And, when you're, so I think that, this idea that older churches can't reach people, I don't know that that's entirely true. And again, I don't think all churches, need to be doing the same thing.
Right.
So, maybe the role of a Presbyterian church is going to be different than that. As I like to say, most Presbyterian churches, we write checks to people who do that kind of stuff. We don't actually do it directly. And again, I look at it, my old church in New York, it's on the Upper East Side. It's like serving there are homeless in the neighborhood. And it's like, they work with homelessness ministries, but you're just in a different environment. When you're kind of working class, rural Indiana, you got people with a lot of problems out there. So it's, that's the field there. But I do think that this idea that they can't make converts. Well, who are they trying to make converts of?
Right.
There are so many. This is one of my theories on what I've labeled the negative world is, the world becomes, more hostile to Christianity, or America becomes more hostile to Christianity. One of the ways that you do the Great Commission is to be the lighthouse and the safe harbor for people who are experiencing the consequences of the way that this world operates,
right?
Which can often be very severe for people. And there are so many hurting people in this world that think about how many people are lonely.
Right.
So many people are lonely. I used to notice this in New York, that there were people on church on Sunday morning. You could just tell that the reason they were there was to try to find some sort of community or find that. And, when you read about epidemics of loneliness, when you look at the drug abuse, when you look at all these things that are happening in the world, there's like an infinite range of serious problems that people have, that the church is willing to, the church is able to, I think, speak very powerfully, into that with the power, of the gospel. That's what I think when Jesus said it was, easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man, to enter the kingdom of heaven. There's a part of it, when your life seems to be put together, you don't really perceive your need, for the gospel. Somebody who's got big problems knows that there's a problem. Or it's like my brother puts it, rich people go to therapy, poor people go to church. And there's something like when you're trying to reach sort of a bourgeois audience, it's like, my goodness, the upper middle class people, it's very hard to reach them through evangelism. But it's like, why is that the only target market that we have in America? There's a lot of people, that I think there's the fields are white to the harvest.
Yes. I that's a good word. It's one of the mottos that I'm trying to get to catch on is like, make Presbyterianism normal again, or make Presbyterianism poor again. Right. Just like there are, if we would, you could turn your attention to all the kinds of people you're talking about, with ministry, and you would, in many places have no problem with the harvest.
Now, I've also said, there's no shame in trying to reach the elite. And, the elite need the gospel. They may need it more in some respects because they don't know that they need it. And so I think having churches that serve an elite audience, that are forming elites to really lead in our society, that's an important role. So I don't want to denigrate that too much. But I just want to push back on this idea that only new churches are capable of doing evangelism. I don't think that that's true.
So let's push into that just a little bit. One of the things that you've talked about that I find really interesting is that you are not so hard on those who are elite as elite, right? So you have defended, in a sense, elitism before, and there does seem to be a pretty strong anti-elitism, at least among certain sectors of the conservative world, even if it's inconsistent at times. But I'd love to hear you talk more about that. Why is, I guess, elitism necessary? As we've talked about institutions, what about the elite?
Well, every society is going to be run by elites. The only question is whether your elites are any good. And, in the era of the old WASP establishment, we had elites that were formed through a Protestant tradition. It was a liberal Protestant tradition, but it was still a Protestant tradition. And there was an ethos associated with that. And they had very institutional mindsets and very much a sense of stewardship over the country, which they sort of viewed as their property, in a sense. Today, our elites are not very good in America. They're clearly failing us. You can even go back to the 1970s, when things were going bad in America in the 1970s. Watergate, oil embargoes, stagflation, all of that. American elites kind of got together, and I might say it literally happened, in a room, but they kind of said, we need to make some reforms. And so we need to deregulate some of these industries. We're overregulated in our economy. And so deregulation happened under Jimmy Carter, started under Jimmy Carter. He was one of initiated deregulation, and it continued into the Reagan administration. And Reagan's success in deregulation probably would not have occurred had there not already been an elite consensus that we needed to make some reforms because America was not doing so well. And so we made made some reforms in that era. Like today, do we have an elite that's capable of making needed reforms? Today, our problem is not that we suffer from an excess of regulation in the sense that we did in the 70s. Not clear what all of our problems are, but we don't have an elite that are really capable of doing that. And evangelicalism is a middle class phenomenon, or you could even say like a working class phenomenon. It's got a middle class mindset to it, and that's really not a mindset of being an elite leader or running organizations. There's the famous book about the scandal, The Evangelical Mind. And so I do think this idea, kind of evangelicalism has always been a little bit more experiential, less intellectual, less elite. again, more middle class in orientation, which is not bad. There's a lot of virtues in the middle class, but the middle class culture is not the culture that's needed to lead society or organizations.
Yeah, I was reading a book. I can't remember what this came from now that I'm about to say it, but I was reading once or listening to a book, and it was talking about the aristocracy in, I don't remember where exactly this was, but somewhere in Europe. And it was talking about just the aristocratic mindset. And it spoke of how, there would be these aristocrats who would go and they would plant a tree with the intent that it would be there to, bear fruit for their great grandchildren when they were long gone. And, I just thought, this is why they were the aristocrats. That was what I thought. I thought, like these men who are thinking ahead generationally and thinking, this is how I'm going to establish my family and my line and how I'm going to set up the next generations in order that they might rule. It makes sense to me why they would then end up in positions of greater authority. So this is one of the things when I think about the elite, it just makes me think, okay, well, I do, like you said, I want an elite, but I want a good one.
Yeah. I mean, Alexis de Tocqueville in Democracy in America talks all about that. He contrasts the aristocratic mindset with the democratic mindset. And, he saw democracy, as inevitable and superior, but he recognized that would entail some losses, as well. And, we are, a democratic country with a democratic mindset. We're also a country shaped by the frontier. The idea of leaving and going to the frontier, go west, young man, very powerful. So Americans are the people of exit, right? That's, we're the people who leave and go start new things. That sort of restlessness is in the American character. And it's very powerful. It's what enabled us to essentially kind of tame a continent and all the things that we built if we didn't have that restless spirit about us. The frontier experience of America is really one of the things that's sort of been edited out of American identity, something to go back and think more about. A lot of people today really don't give you the straight scoop on American history, to be honest. But this the frontier is key to American identity, and American mindset is very important. So, by nature, we're sort of middle class, we're leavers, we're go start the new thing, et cetera.
Here's the problem for our average listener is there pretty much nothing they can do about the state of the elites in the country at this point, right? Because I feel like it's a pretty, or at least most people recognize, hey, there's a problem with the people who rule us, who lead us, right? I think that's pretty common, but I think most people feel basically powerless over the situation.
Be the elite you want to see in the world, as the quip may go. One of the things that I say is, if we don't like the current elite, how can we prepare ourselves to be able to exercise leadership, to exercise authority ourselves? How do we do that? How do we lead well and execute well within our span of control, which may only be in our homes? Maybe for a lot of people, only their homes. Probably not a great elite leadership happening in the homes of a lot of evangelicals. Be a good elite in institutional steward of your church. There are a lot of domains in which people can do things. Also think about, who are you interested in promoting, elevating, voting for? Is it purely the bomb-throwing e-celeb who wants to own the libs or something of that nature? Or do you reward like serious people? And so I've been a big critic of American leadership. I think our problems primarily result from a defective elite, but let's not pretend that the American people are this phenomenal reservoir of, healthy living and, good decision-making and a lot of the values. I mean, I look at the problems of my own state of Indiana. A lot of the problems that we have in our state are the result of the preferences of the people who live here. We just have to take that. Yes, our elite are bad, but the followers have to take some responsibility as well. And they've been responsive to, rhetoric, and they've got preferences that just don't lead to success.
Yeah.
I think if you look back to the era of kind of the establishment, America was less democratic in a sense. For example, presidential nominees used to, by and large, be selected by party insiders at conventions and the like. We didn't have a lot of primary elections. Many people, I'm not the only person who said this, a lot of people have said the move to primary elections away from caucuses and conventions and those sorts of things has really led to, a promotion of sort of demagoguery, weaker institutions, all sorts of things that are negative about our politics result from an excess of democracy there. There's a book, I think it's Garrett Jones, George Mason. He wrote a book called 10% Less Democracy. It's basically his prescriptions. We just need to have 10% less democracy. I think we sometimes fetishize democracy when in fact, lots of people have been skeptical of democracy, and the American system was set up specifically to not be particularly democratic. When you look at things like direct election of senators, we did a lot of things to introduce more and more and more democracy into the system. And, I think some of the results, then the extent to which you've gone to a more democratic system, then the voters and the people have to accept more responsibility. In a monarchy, you can blame the king for everything. In a democracy, you have to take some responsibility for yourself. And so we have to be, equip ourselves to be better leaders and also become better followers.
I think that's good. And I think it's funny to think that if we do have a problem with the elite, if the cream still rises to the top, it might be a problem with, the batch of, what's rising. I think this reminds me just one other thing I want to make sure our audience hears. I know you've talked about it at least once, and I just thought it was so profound and actually relates a little bit to these problems of lack of action in institutions, in churches, in becoming elite in any domain you can. This dynamic of the grill American. Can you tell our audience what a grill American is?
Well, I didn't coin that term. It may have been the neo-reactionary writer Curtis Yarvin who coined it. I saw it on the internet.
Yeah,
that was a great expression. They used the term grill American, and the grill American, and is this what I mean by the middle class mindset? The grill America is a middle class suburbanite who all he wants to do is to be left alone to grill in his backyard and watch the NFL on his big screen TV and things like that. He's very focused on sort of small personal pleasures of that nature. The petite bourgeoisie mindset a little bit there.
Yeah.
And those people basically are not especially interested in, big social issues or society. It's basically the leave me alone so I can grill mindset. And a lot of conservatives fall into that. And, this one guy I know, he's got this quip: silence is violence beats don't tread on me any day of the week.
Sure.
One is about advancing a moral position. The other is just leave me alone. And so you have a lot of people whose basic view is, I just want to sit here in my backyard and grill and be left alone. And as long as I can do that, I'm happy. And when something starts affecting that, then they get upset, but otherwise, the society at large doesn't really matter too much to them. And again, that's probably the norm. Most people are really kind of going to fall into that kind of mode of thinking. And that's why you have to have, leadership who can lead. It isn't just essentially a roll up of democratic preferences as well. It's worth reflecting on why aristocrats and why to the intellectual elite and other things have always been so contemptuous of sort of the middle class. Think about the novels of Sinclair Lewis and the way that he just disdain for the middle class, or think about H.L. Mencken. They didn't like the middle class. And I think when you look at the contempt that drips off of them, it's very easy to say these just elitist jerks. You just rebel against that. And then we can go too far in the other direction and sort of lean into that. There's a famous quip by William F. Buckley, something to the effect of, I'd rather be governed by the first 300 names in the Boston phone book than the faculty at Harvard.
Right.
Again, when he says that, you got to keep in mind, he's a Yale man, so he's getting in a dig at Harvard. But it is this sort of mentality. And there was a guy who was aspirationally elite. I mean, he affected all of these WASP mannerisms and things of that nature. It's sort of this idea that, like, yes, the elites are so bad. Why don't we just put the common man in charge and everything's going to be great? This valorization of sort of the common man and running everything. And I think realistically, that's not a viable way to run the world. When Tocqueville talked about self-governance in the New England town, he was talking about rural areas, small areas with relatively small problems. And you can have self-government in that sort of thing. You can't really self-govern the operations of the U.S. military, or something of that nature. Our world is big, it's complex, it's highly technological. It requires a lot of skills, technical knowledge, and expertise in order to administer. This idea that we just need to empower the kind of the common man more. There's a part of it that's very true. There's a part of that's very true. I do think people have much greater ability to run their own lives than we like to give them credit for, to respond to incentives. But nevertheless, I think we've over-valorized the sort of democracy and the virtues of the common man. Again, this comes out of political conservatism, as much as religious conservatism, in ways that are unhealthy and minimize the importance of having a well-formed elite prepared to lead institutionally. You need both in a republic, or you need both, like a virtuous citizenry that's robust, but you also need these leaders as well. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, these guys were elites.
Right.
They were not just random people who happened to find themselves in charge one day.
Right. And I think you compared these grill Americans and saying that Christians and conservatives who want to see change in their communities, or in their churches, or in the wider society, need to take a lesson from leftists, which stings a little bit, right? Which may be why you put it this way, because they are routinely sacrificing, we'll call it a normal life, right? This idealized normal suburban life for the sake of the things they want to see advanced.
Right. There are a lot of highly educated people on the left who take jobs at NGOs that don't pay very much money. And not all of them are just doing their stint at a nonprofit before they apply to grad school. There are some people, resume polishing there, but there are a lot of true believers who work for these, organizations. A lot of these activists are, they're not wealthy people being supported by mom and dad. They don't have a trust fund. We do have a lot of conservatives that, for example, go to top law schools. Where do they end up work? They work in private practice. They pursue business success. They're not as likely to go work in a public interest law firm or a nonprofit, whereas some of the environmental firms, the environmental litigation nonprofits that I know, they got like Yale Law School grads lining up to work for peanuts for them. And again, some of them are just doing their stint in the nonprofit world, but they actually have higher values than their own personal consumption of goods and services in their cult home in the cul-de-sac, in the suburbs, and all of that. And if you don't have something that you value more than consumption, then you're sort of hobbled. And you're probably not going to change things. And I absolutely believe that thinkers on the left are often quite illuminating and far smarter in a lot of ways than ones on the right. Everybody likes to complain about cultural Marxism of the Frankfurt School, and I wonder how many of these people have actually read any writings by those guys. If you read Marcuse, it's like, wow, that guy had some profound insights, very profound insights, and really interesting attitudes towards the world. That there are things you could learn from, even if you don't agree with their moral systems or their views. They were actually quite sharp, in a lot of things, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, there you go, you guys. Everyone here heard it first that Aaron Renn's a cultural Marxist, I guess. No,
the critical methods of the left are powerful and should be understood, even if not agreed with. If they're so wrong, why do they keep winning? You should ask yourself that
exactly.
If you got the truth, how come you keep losing? If I'm so smart, why am I not the CEO of this company? You got to ask yourself that. Like, why am I not, X, Y, or Z person? Maybe I need to be more reflective. Maybe we all need to be more reflective and think about man, what are we actually missing? Maybe not where are we wrong, but what are we missing? We have to be open to considering that.
Do you think the inability to kind of look at yourself and take that kind of responsibility is one of the reasons for the seeming anyway growth in conspiracy theories? Because a conspiracy theory allows you to kind of peg everything on, well, there's this, some kind of cabal of elites that are like, they're making these decisions, and that's why my life is so messed up. I just thought of that while you were talking.
Well, the sociologist E. Digby Baltzel says that conspiracy theories are a natural outgrowth of the decline in trust of institutions. And so there's probably a connection between the decline of institutions and the rise of conspiracy theories. Yeah. If you go back to maybe the granddaddy of all the conspiracy theories, the JFK assassination, I don't think it's any accident that happened just as the establishment was collapsing and trust in institutions in America was collapsing during Vietnam and, those sorts of things.
Totally.
And so, that's, if we had trustworthy institutions, there would be fewer conspiracy theories if there were high institutional trust.
Totally. This is why I often, actually, I'm in a small town in Wisconsin. I talk to a lot of people who harbor a lot of conspiracy theories on various levels, and I actually have a lot of compassion for them because, their experiences, I can repeatedly see people telling me things in these many institutions, whether it's the church, media, politics, I know to be false. And then, of course, it becomes very profitable to be the only person who really knows the truth, right? When you can cut the siphon of true information down to you, that puts you in a very powerful and potentially profitable place. And there's no limit to the people who are willing to put themselves there. And I think one of the things everyone will appreciate, if you don't already follow Aaron's writing at the American Reformer or his podcast, The Aaron Renn Show, I think you will appreciate, because I think it always encourages self-reflection, especially for those who are Christians and those who are conservative in general ways, because that's what I appreciate about it, whether it's learning to think institutionally or these discussions of what it will take to take the next step forward as Christians in America and in society.
Right. If only we had some people behind the scenes pulling some strings. I do think, our society does behave as if there are conspiracy theories, because you do see that all of our institutions seem to respond in lockstep to anything, whether it be, think about the war in Ukraine or you name it. There is a sort of appearance that someone must be sending down a message from Central HQ when in fact this is more like a school of fish, all turning at once. But the high degree of synchronization among elite institutions does give off the appearance of a conspiracy, and so I can understand why people think that, even though there's no actual man behind the curtain. Now, I don't know if that's more terrifying or less terrifying.
Thank you, Aaron Renn, for coming, being on the show, talking to us. To everyone else, be the elite you want to see in the world. Later.